Help support the show by joining the Patreon or becoming a YouTube member. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want more Browns-focused content. There is a lot going on with the Cleveland Browns. They most recently, as far as recording this video, have made a trade for an offensive lineman. It's been interesting to hear Andrew Berry talk about this offseason because on one hand, this is a man clearly threading a needle, right? Like he is saying we want to be better, we want to improve, but we also want to have our eyes in the future. And I think this is the first time that we have witnessed a general manager do something that we've actually seen them do before as far as their pattern goes, which is what Andrew Berry's doing. And to discuss that, I got my guy, Mac Robinson of 92.3, The Fan, on with me. But what I'm alluding to with Andrew Berry is this. We have seen him be in this phase of a rebuild before, as he likes to put it, and this is peak. Just like sometimes Andrew Berry is like the most corporate person of all time because he says stuff like at this point in our life cycle, which is crazy, right? Like when you actually think about it, it's like, wow, he's just saying it, right? But, you know, we've seen him at this point where it's like, yeah, we want to get better. We want to add young guys, but we also want to keep an eye towards competing. It's kind of where he was when he took the job in 2020. And it's fascinating to see him on a second go around of this, right? How it's going to go. And I think that's the conversation we need to have about Andrew, just evaluating his ability to do his job. Because I think so much of the conversation about Andrew becomes about emotionally, how do you feel about where the Browns have been, instead of just evaluating Andrew's ability to do his job versus his ability to not succeed at his job.
Yeah, and I think that you're right there because obviously, you know, you've only had a couple of postseason runs, but you actually look at, you know, some of the moves that he's made throughout the years. And I think that it's interesting because at least early on, you saw a lot of success when it came to, you know, adding somebody like a Jack Conklin as well. And even in that first offseason, where a lot of it was just Band-Aids, especially, you know, on defense. You know, I still think back to, you know, adding in, you know, Mike Goodson or Keanu Neal in the defensive backfield there. Like a lot of just stopgaps that they had done at least early on in order to kind of plug up and throw some Band-Aids over some of those issues. But at the same time, we've seen over these last few years in particular, you know, the drafting and development of the defensive side of the ball, at least when it comes to, you know, Alex Wright. And not only that, but also extending these guys and even extending somebody like a Grant Delpit. And even JOK prior to the injury, you know, and again, evaluating those talents while also being able to take a look at, you know, hey, here's an opportunity that we have when it comes to adding into the rooms, whether it be Jerry Jeudy. Like, I think that Andrew at least has shown a great ability in terms of at least assessing the open market and finding those weaknesses where other teams might be, you know, a year behind or so, or even at least trying to take advantage of some of the inefficiencies that the rest of the NFL doesn't necessarily look at, while also trying to go ahead and use those avenues to, you know, maybe push the Browns forward when, you know, you're hamstrung by not having 3 first-round picks for you know, over that duration because of the Deshaun Watson trade. So I think that the creativity that he's shown in certain aspects, I think is definitely a plus. But also, too, again, every GM has misses when it comes to draft picks. I think that's, you know, that's something that I think we need to have more appreciation and understanding for. But also,
we just need to scale those conversations better because people will
yes,
value like a miss in the 5th round and try to point that out to me like it fucking matters at all. Like, you know,
right.
I think that's been kind of my disconnect with some of it. It's just like, it's very clear that you want me to care about this because you don't like the person that we're talking about, right?
Right.
Not saying you, but like this, like
No,
in
I got you.
general. yeah, in general, the conversation kind of feels like it goes that way whenever you talk about Andrew. You did bring up something with him, right? And I think one of his best traits. I remember doing the objective review of Andrew Berry last year, and I'm going to try to do an update to that pretty soon, where I add some more information about the last season and how that's affected, how that he's viewed in that. But I remember one takeaway I had was that Quincy Aldo Mensa out there in Minnesota, who's not out there in Minnesota, yes, saw that one coming last year. Well, when I did the study, I'm like, whoo, these drafts are bad, right? As far as approximate value is concerned, right? Like they were really bad. And then he got fired because them drafts are really bad. But another thing is like the pro personnel stuff, the trade stuff with Andrew, he's really good at, right? I think that's like somewhere where he's pretty strong at. And I think it's because you hear people talk about Andrew, and other GMs, and I think what Jarrett had to report out that like other GMs really do respect him. And it's like he has this knack for not falling into the current trends and the inefficiencies in the market, right? People are paying $35 million a year for wide receiver. What does he do? He uses a fifth and a sixth, and he gets Jerry Jeudy for 15. And you can say, well, Jerry Jeudy didn't have a good year this year. But it's like, well, Jerry Jeudy had the career year his first year, had an off year this year. But go look at a Calvin Ridley deal and tell me you would have rather done that, right? Like, there's no shot you would have. I would much rather have been doing the Jerry Jeudy deal than he did. I mean, like the Amari Cooper deal, right? Like he refused to get into these $35 million markets when it came to wide receiver if he didn't value somebody at that level. And even when it comes to all of Miles's contracts, it's remarkable that Miles has been as good as long as Miles has been good. This is not somebody who caught anybody by surprise being the level of player that Myles Garrett is. But if you look at both the big contracts that Andrew Berry negotiated and got, those were legitimately impossible to say, but they weren't good deals for the team. Like it was invaluable, right? Like look at what Miles got compared to what Micah got and what TJ got. And it's not even close that Miles is better than both those players, especially TJ Watt at this point of his career. And we're already at the portion of that contract where we're like, pretty good deal, right? Like it took 3 months for that to be true about the Myles Garrett contract, right? He has a good tact for when to make these deals happen, right? Getting the Grant deal done early. The JOK deal got done early, right? You know, if he lets something linger and it feels like, oh, the timing's bad to get a good deal, it's probably because he doesn't want to keep that player. He has really good timing on these extensions. And when he's either signing somebody to a contract or in trying to get a trade, the price is the price, right? I think he's been very transparent with it. I'm willing to pay this much. I'm not going to haggle that much. I'm not going to try to lowball you. This is what it's worth, right? He'll try to sell you that the player is worth that move or not, but he's not going to change his mind. Also, like with the Myles Garrett contract negotiation, right? He understood immediately going into that there was not going to be a trade that would be worth trading Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
So what did he say immediately? It's just not going to happen. like it's not going to happen. He has been really good with that stuff. Like I think if there's another GM here, it's possible we don't have Myles Garrett anymore. I think that there's a lot of guys that maybe he didn't draft, but he retained on that defensive side of the ball that he does not get credit for, that I think he should. I think what the Shelby Harris signing, the Malik Collins signing, right? The Devin Bush signing, I put that on my mama. It wasn't going to be good. And it ended up being one of the best signings he's ever had, right? Yeah. Like, you know, Grant Delpit extension, like that wasn't a guarantee at the time. Grant Delpit was very up and down until 2023. People forget
trading
this.
Greg for Tyson Campbell.
He's made a lot of shrewd moves. And it's interesting because like I'll hear people debate whether Andrew Berry is a good, can build a roster. And they'll use the offense as the example. I think the offense is more of the inevitable circumstance of the Watson trade failing and in a number of sequential bets that you put in with the Watson trade also failing. Like if this were Wall Street, it would be the opposite of the Big Short, right? Like that's how bad these bets ended up being for the Cleveland Browns, where it's like, okay, you bet on a top 5 quarterback to be a top 5 quarterback. He doesn't stay. Right? It's like they put their money on Enron and Toys R Us. And it's like 2003, right? Like it's like, oh, it's just gonna go up. What's gonna go wrong here, right? And then everything just goes off, right? Pets.com, I think, is another famous one, right? It's like everything that the people told them would be a good bet to put their money on. Hey, we're going to put this money on Deshaun Watson. We're going to put these draft picks on him. Well, that means that we have to double down on the offensive line because we don't have the assets to replace them. But we can keep them with money. So they double down on the offensive line. They double down on Deshaun Watson. Everybody's like, this is a great idea, right? Top 5 quarterback on paper, if we're just not talking about all the off the field stuff, which some people, including myself, were focused on, I think was fair. But also it's like, oh, look at that offensive line. They're not going to get bad anytime soon, maybe Joe gets old.
To add on to that, look at Ethan Posick.
Yeah.
You're able to bring him in all of a sudden when J.C. Treader was at the door. Like,
so
it's replacing him.
Yeah, you're able to you make these bets on the offense and they just don't work out, right? The offensive line ages just much faster than you were anticipating. Like no anybody was anticipating, right? I remember getting yelled at in 2023 or 2022 and 2023. I'm like, hey, I think this is going to age faster than we want with the offensive line. Everybody told me to shut up, right? But it ended up being the case. And I think it's just so many bets went wrong on the offensive side of the ball that I don't think that side looked like that because Andrew Berry can't team build. I think that side looked like that because, boy, did we make some bad bets. Some bets that look good at the time, but, man, you couldn't have imagined how bad. Because, like, some of those bets did work out. Jerry Jeudy, you could argue still to this point, like, if he has another good season, that's undoubtedly it worked out. I think the Amari Cooper trade, that worked out. Like, there were some moves. David Njoku, the bet on David Njoku worked out, right? But the bet on this offensive line of quarterback is what ended up blowing up this team. Then Nick Chubb gets a horrendous career-ending or career-altering injury in the middle of all of this, right? Like, just all the things that you bet the team on. Nick Chubb, the offensive line, and then Deshaun Watson, who was a top 5 quarterback when you traded for him. Those bets did not work out. But if you look at his ability to build the defense without first-round picks, like the defensive rebuild started after the Deshaun Watson trade, right? Deshaun was here the year that Joe Woods got fired. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but he was here.
Yeah, that was his first year here was the last year of Joe.
Yeah, and that defense was awful. I think we have forgotten how bad the defense was in 2022, but it was bad. And then he points his resources at it. He points his focus at it, and it gets fixed. I think the issue with the Browns, as far as team building hasn't really been that they are a poorly built team. I don't think they're a poorly built team. I just think they're a team that has experienced such an incredible bad run of fortune on the offensive side of the ball. Like, I don't really know what other way to put it than like, hey, man. All the bet on Kevin didn't work out. The bet on the offensive line didn't work out. Like, think about telling yourself in 2020 that 4 years from now, Nick Chubb will be a shell of himself. Joe Bitonio, Wyatt Teller will be reduced significantly from their peak. You're going to draft DeJuan Jones, but he tears his ACL 2 times. You're going to trade for Deshaun Watson, who at that point was still Deshaun Watson. And he would only play 19 games in 5 years. And of those 19 games, 4 of them were maybe impressive. And and that you would drastically lose faith in Kevin Stefanski by 2024.
Oh, and not to mention Odell and Jarvis Landry would not be here either.
Oh yeah, I forgot they were on the team at that point. Yeah, yeah.
They wouldn't have
But
made it 2 seasons.
yeah, so it's like all of these things. It's like when they were made, when these bets were made on that side of the ball, it's not like they didn't make sense. They did make sense. It's just it did not work out.
Yeah.
And I on some level you want Andrew to be a little bit more flexible, but on another level, it's like how flexible could he have been with the resources that he has? I think it's okay to not be sold on Andrew, but I want to see what he can do with this offense. Like I feel like if we had fired him before giving him an opportunity to see what he could do to fix this offense, we would feel like we have given ourselves a disservice. I think it is fair enough to say, let's see what he can do here, because I am impressed with what he did with the defense. What he's done with the last couple of drafts, I think has been impressive as well. And I think he's always been, since he's gotten here, pretty strong with the pro personnel stuff.
Yeah, and that's where I think that on the offensive side, like you said, you haven't really put together that many, moves or upgrades really on that side of the ball. But by comparison, at least, the few moves that he did make actually were pretty impressive to me for the most part. Like you mentioned, the Jerry Jeudy deal. You had the Amari Cooper deal a few years ago. And again, attempting to try to add to that side of the ball, I think has been interesting. Now, granted, again, and it's why, you heard about it as much from Todd Monken throughout the entire, throughout his time now as Browns coach. You heard it in Andrew's postseason presser, but talking about the fact that, hey, it's about development. It's about taking those guys that you take and you add to them. You add to that next level and you see them take that next step. And again, you saw that from the defensive side, at least, where you saw that growth from those guys. Whereas on the offensive side, you had some guys that were very, very talented and that made those strides throughout the season. But also the last couple of years, you hadn't necessarily seen that as much. It's why I'm curious to see how this coaching staff is able to take that going forward. But like you mentioned, too, with the pro personnel, I think that that's where you're going to go ahead and see the interesting side of things when it comes to Andrew. Because again, you've seen them. Andrew, in terms of the additions that he has, he doesn't just go out and just get guys to go ahead and say, hey, you know what, figure it out, you do it. It's, hey, you know what, and more so than a lot of teams especially, it's a collaborative effort. So for him, and especially with somebody like Todd, where Todd has different systems that he's worked with different quarterbacks and made it work with different guys, where you have somebody like a Jameis Winston that, is more of the pocket passer that he had some success with. Now, granted, there's only so much that you can deal with Jameis, clearly, as we found out in 2024. But also, you saw what he did with Lamar Jackson, what he was able to do as a thrower, and how that affected things. So I think that having somebody that's versatile, like Todd Monken, that is able to get the most out of a lot of different types of players, I think also gives Andrew more flexibility when it comes to players that he's able to bring in and add, which then I think that, can maybe we see more aggressiveness when it comes to Andrew Berry in terms of the players that he adds, where, if there's less strict parameters as to what the offense needs going into this coming season, I think that, you might be able to see Andrew, flex some of the aggressive muscles that he has sometimes when it comes to these player personnel moves, I think.